help. Okay, well, I think it is time for us to start. It looks like we have about 70 people on YouTube, and we are filling our Zoom room here. This is the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and Community Groups. And this is our monthly May meeting and forum, and we are glad you are all here. If you are a block association, please join us. If you would like to start a block association, please contact us. If you'd like help with your block association, please be in touch. If you are a neighbor and want to know what we are doing, the programs we're doing, please reach out to us. We have a website with plenty of information, upperwestsidecoalition.org. We have an email address, upperwestsidecoalition@gmail.com. Lots of information, lots of ways to be in touch with us, and we appreciate it. My name is Steve Anderson. I'm on the board of directors and serving as the president for 2022. And I'm proud to be here with a lot of people who make these meetings happen. The extraordinary Mark Diller from West 79th Street, a longtime community board member, a former chair, and it turns out a technological whiz as far as we are concerned in our community. Our standards may not be as high as some, but at least we have some standards, okay? So we appreciate that he is here. Liz DeVito is on our board and is one of the people who runs our programs from West 75th Street. And Dee Reber is here and is joining me in moderating this program. Dee is also from West 75th Street and someone who's been an integral part of the founding of this organization and keeping us going. So I'm appreciative to have all of their help. Dee is someone who edits our newsletter. If you will go to upperwestsidecoalition.org, you can sign up for that newsletter. If you send us an email at upperwestsidecoalition@gmail.com, you will be signed up. So that would be very good. People in the Zoom room, I just want to remind you, please, one question. This is a topic that is incredibly important to so many of us, and we want to get in as many questions as we can. One question for one of our guests at a time, and then we'll move around. To our guests, we appreciate you, we respect you, and we need your help. And we want to help you help make our community a safer place for everyone. We feel it is incredibly important the work you do, and incredibly important that you have chosen to join us this evening, the three of you. So I welcome Captain Zuber from the 20th Precinct, my home precinct, Deputy Inspector Yaguchi from the 24th Precinct, and Deputy Inspector Gallagher from the Central Park Precinct. So we thank you so much for joining us tonight. The way I'd like to kick it off is to ask each of you to give us just a brief sense of how you see the crime and the crime prevention challenge, both in your area and on the entire Upper West Side, because we are all concerned about this and we all need to know much more and learn how we can be part of the solution. So I have to start with Captain Zuber. I'd be in trouble in my own precinct. So if you could, Captain Zuber, unmute and join us with our thanks. And to those who are on YouTube, please do enter any questions you have in the chat. Dee will be going to the chat and pulling questions from there. And there are dozens of questions that have been sent in by email for people who can't join us this evening. We won't get to all of them, but we'll surely try to get as many as we can. Captain Zuber.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this and thank you for inviting us. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody here as one group. I see many faces on here that we speak to daily, weekly, monthly at the very least. And of course, Bill Gallagher and Aoki Yaguchi and I and all the other commanders here in the NYPD, we speak very frequently. We're aware of everything that's happening, of course, in our own precincts. We're aware of what's happening around the city. So just very quickly, I'm in the 20th precinct. So obviously that's the Upper West Side. We're in the southern part of that from 59th Street to 86th Street. And what we see here is a microcosm of what we see across the city. Looking at the statistics here, there's only one precinct. New York City is divided into 77 precincts. At this point in the year, there's only one precinct that is showing a very slight decrease in crime across the city. Every other precinct is actually up in crime. When we're thinking about that, it's really not a surprise when we think about where we were a couple years ago and where we find ourselves now. We're still coming out of a pandemic. People much smarter than us, sociologists and economics professors, are going to be talking about the effects that COVID-19 and the shutdowns had on our society and on crime for many, many years to come before they can figure anything out. I can tell you that some of the monumental challenges that we're facing now are homegrown. We are facing shortages within our ranks, and we're facing shortages in the will to actually do what is necessary to combat crime. Here in the 20th precinct, even though we're seeing increases in crime in almost every category, you're talking about violent crime, but for the most part, we're talking about property crime. And the good news is you are still living, you're still working, you are still participating in a very safe neighborhood. Comparable to the rest of the city, the Upper West Side is very safe. It is, however, not quite as safe as it was a year or two ago. That's because of an increase in crime. I can tell you that here in the 20th precinct, we are at a deficit of a little over 30 police officers from where we were in January of 2020. Despite that, I want you to know the amazing work that these officers in the 20th to 24th Central Park and across New York City and around the country are doing every single day. They're out there every day doing the job that they were hired to do, making arrests, summoning people for infractions. Even though crime is up and we are at a significant deficit of police officers, I can say, just looking at the sheet, arrests across the board in every single category of crime are up 25% in the 20th precinct. That means the average police officer, each individual officer, is not just doing the job he or she did 2 years ago. They're doing that much more since they're making up for the lack of manpower. The biggest issue that I see, that Stephen, you and I have talked about, that my colleagues and I speak about all the time, is what happens after the police officers make that arrest. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more often the prosecution to keep these people off the streets is not there. You can debate back and forth as to why that is, what actual effects that has down the road. But I can say, just looking at it from my 20,000-foot point of view, you're not having any kind of repercussions to the criminals who are committing the crimes and are being arrested for the crimes. So we are arresting the same people over and over and over again for very similar crimes, if not the same exact crime. Many times, as they are released here from the station house, we get a report of them committing the same exact crime, property crimes, whether it be shoplifting or a grand larceny, here in the Upper West Side, minutes later or hours later. That's a serious problem. When you go back in times to when the city was known as being the safest big city in the world, in the country at least, you did not have that issue. So over the last few years, there's been a shift in political views, and there's been a shift in a lot of the laws that has constrained everything that we do here as a police department. I want you to know that we are dedicated. These officers are dedicated. They are going to continue doing their jobs. It's up to this partnership that we have with the community to make it so that the community is safer and the officers are safer to do their jobs by keeping the people off the street. There has to be some kind of repercussions. I'm sure there's going to be many questions about this as we go on, but I want to keep these opening statements pretty short.
Thank you very much, Captain. We appreciate your comments. Deputy Inspector Yaguchi, 24th Precinct, would you share with us just briefly 2 or 3 minutes your sense of both the precinct and our community, Upper West Side community?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting the three of us onto this. Any opportunity we can have to connect with the community, listen to the community, it's a really great opportunity for us. We look at the numbers, we look at the data. There's a lot of things that we hear at community council meetings, community meetings, our build the block meetings for our NCOs, that we do change our deployment and we do move around our cops based on your concerns. So we hope to hear some of the issues that you're having. Just a quick little overview for the 24th Precinct. like Captain Zuber said, we are also up in crime, about 75 index crimes in the 7 categories that we kind of focus on, which is murder, which is homicide, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny, and vehicle thefts. What's driving our crime, the 75 index crime increase for us, is burglaries and grand larcenies. Burglaries were up about 79 versus 44. Residential burgs were up about 55 versus 32. And then the commercial burgs were up about 20 versus 20 over 10. Grand larcenies were up 184 versus 140. And then if you start breaking that down, we have increases in the shoplifting category, bicycles being stolen, some of the identity theft related grand larcenies, which is like the scams over the internet, people losing money somehow through online banking or accounts being open in their name without knowing about it. We also have we have an increase in vehicle break-ins, both in the categories of grand larcenies and petty larcenies. So that's kind of what's driving our crime up in the 2-4. And then finally, I'll just echo what Captain Zuber said. What we see in these robberies, the grand larcenies, whether it's the vehicle break-ins, the shopliftings, the burglary crimes that we're seeing, is that we keep seeing the same names come up over and over and over. So we'll make an arrest of an individual multiple times, and we'll see that person again. And it usually does take a number of arrests before the courts, until, I should say, there's some kind of consequence. And when I say consequence, I mean jail time. So that's kind of the number one thing that I think that we see, and somewhat frustrating for the cops that are making these great arrests, that a number of arrests have to be made. But, like Captain Zuber said, we're going to do our part. And then it's up to everybody else to kind of hold these individuals accountable. So I'll turn it over back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We appreciate that. Deputy Inspector Gallagher from Central Park Precinct, please share your perspective with us, and thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you for the invitation, Steve. It's good to see everybody. It's also good to see my friends Neil and Aoki, who I have to be honest with you, I can't think of 2 better neighbors to have in the police department than both of them. They're very concerned and very committed public servants, and it's just a joy to work with both of them. All 3 of us are very, very good friends, and we talk frequently, and we have a very good relationship. What am I seeing in Central Park? I'm currently up 1 index crime, which is concerning because we're in May, and obviously things are slow very significantly in the early part of the year in Central Park. Obviously in January, February, and March, where the weather is much colder, less people go in the park, there's less activity, less patrons. So therefore, we would hope to see a stronger decline in crime. Just like Neil said, I think Neil hit the nail right on the head. Our officers in Central Park and all over the city are working hard, doing their jobs, making apprehensions. I have a very large number of apprehensions on my index crime. And those apprehensions are what we call summary arrests, meaning somebody calls 911, the officers respond, and the responding officers are able to find that person and place them under arrest, as opposed to a detective conducts an investigation and then weeks later tracks somebody down and arrests that person. So the number of summary arrests we have in Central Park is very good, actually very high for the park historically. But again, my concern is that second part of the criminal justice system is that when a crime is committed, the police do their investigation, they make an arrest. What did the courts do? And the frustration that we see is increasingly individuals commit serious crimes and are let go, only to go out and do it again. So I have a very good example that happened fairly recently inside Central Park, where I had an individual just walk up to an elderly lady, I mean, with no provocation, nothing, and just punch her in the face and push her, causing her a pretty serious injury to her. We were able to apprehend that person essentially on the spot. But then when we go and we look back at this person's history, we see that 3 weeks prior to that incident, this person hit two other individuals over the head with a rock in a neighboring command, not the Upper West Side, but on the East Side, got arrested by a police officer there and was simply let go by a judge. So I think that we need to make sure that when people are arrested and brought before a court, that there is a sense of accountability. Now, obviously, people are entitled to due process. They're entitled to the presumption of innocence, and there has to be all of that. And that's extremely important. But when the evidence overwhelmingly shows that somebody is dangerous to society, there has to be some way to make sure that they're held before trial. And I think that is really what the driving factor of what's going on in the city of New York. The police department as an entity has never taken the position that there needs to be a cash bail system. The police department has taken the position that judges need to have the ability to make judgments about whether somebody is dangerous or a flight risk. And I think that if that law was to change and allow that, I think we could better serve and better keep the city of New York safe. I think if you speak to any police commander in the city of New York, probably any police commander in the state of New York, we all have different crimes, we all have different issues, but we're all in agreement that the laws need to change and there has to be more accountability. So I'm sure that will be discussed tonight in greater detail. And I'm looking forward to answering anybody's concerns about issues inside Central Park or in the NYPD in general. And thank you for the opportunity to get all the block associations together and hear from myself, Neil, and Aoki.
Thanks so much to you. So we're going to go to our Zoom room. I would ask that members of the coalition who have a question, brevity is always good. We're going to have one question from people who want it one question at a time to one of the commanding officers. And if you could please self-identify when you come on so that everyone, especially those on YouTube, would be able to know who's asking the question and where you're from. Let's kick it off from Dale. If you could begin, please, Dale.
Thank you. I'm Dale Brown, president of the West 79th Street Block Association, and I'm also vice president of the Upper West Side Coalition. My question is going to be directed to Captain Zuber, who I certainly appreciate participating this evening. The question that I have is, the Columbus Avenue bid is participating in the Open Streets program, closing Columbus Avenue on Sundays, starting May 15th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and running through October. They will be closing 77th to 68th Street on Columbus. Captain, if you have to answer a call on 66th Street, how much longer will it take you to get there, since you cannot do the direct route of going down Columbus Avenue?
I don't know exactly how much longer it's going to take. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of factors at play there. Anybody who's tried to drive around the Upper West Side or New York City at all recently knows that many times 3 lanes go down to 1 lane, go down to no lanes in the span of a block. And to get a block or two, it's often faster to park your car and get out and walk at a brisk pace, let alone jog. That is a concern that we have. It's the extent of the closure and it's the duration of the closure. The fact that it's going to be every Sunday for that many months means that we are not going to have any resources that we can provide for that. If there's a normal, in ordinary circumstances, if there's a normal block party or a normal street fair that's going to happen, we are able to plan ahead and to give some resources. I say normally because that is proving to be less and less the case more recently. There's some factors that go into that. A lot of that is budgetary because we don't have the resources, and a lot of the times we would have overtime resources that we can provide. What is a little bit troubling for us is the fact that there has been less communication now than we're used to having in the past, where we're being told that these are going to happen, whether it be the open streets or block parties or street festivals, street fairs. with very little notice when it turns out that things have been planned quite a ways ahead. This Sunday is going to be a prime example. On the east side, you have a major parade. You have the Israeli Appreciation Parade. That's a major parade that's going to stop traffic on Fifth Avenue and then neighboring blocks, neighboring avenues, from about 52nd Street up to about 75th Street. So what's going to happen at a normal time is the average person who's trying to get downtown or uptown is going to try to avoid that. A natural course of action might be to cut across Central Park and to try to come down on the Upper West Side. Well, they're not going to be able to come down Columbus Avenue. And so it's not just a matter of going southbound on Columbus Avenue, it's every cross street that is trying to get across east and west. When the drivers get to where their MapQuest or their Waze or their Google Maps is telling them to make a turn, they're going to stop and hold up traffic again. What's happening this Sunday is on top of that, there's going to be a major street festival on Broadway for about 8 or 9 blocks. We were just told about this 2 days ago, and it turns out that the office downtown who gave the permit on January 5th. So there's a serious, significant lag about how much time in advance that we're having. So we have this Sunday absolutely no resources that we can give to the street fair or to Columbus Avenue. So it is an issue. We're still only in the 2nd or 3rd week of Columbus Avenue. We will be studying it as we go forward. And we're going to work with everybody we can, with the block associations, with the bid. If we find out that there's a problem, okay, now we're in the business of solving problems. How do we fix that? How do we work around it? How do we make it better going forward? How do we make it safer for everybody? So I'm sure we're going to have more questions as we get deeper into the summer. As everyone knows, this weekend is going to be in the 90s. We expect to see significantly more people out in the street than we did last weekend. And it's going to be a learning experience for all of us.
All right, well, thank you very much. Shelley, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. First, I just want to thank the 3 commanders for their leadership and for their devotion to the public safety of our community, and for their friendship over these years. I'm from 102nd, 103rd Street Block Association, also president of the Westside Federation of Senior and Supportive Housing. It has 13 residences across the community and 2 senior centers. So there's a lot of people that we deal with that are very dependent on the public safety, as everyone is. Our concern is that the summer months are coming, and we know that summer months bring more activity, okay, as was just said, but also generally, I believe, a spike in crime. I'm going to direct this to Deputy Inspector Yaguchi. What plans and preparation are being made by your precinct and beyond for the issues that are likely to be of concern during the summer months?
Thank you, Sheldon, very much, and thank you for all your help over the past 2 years. You've been tremendous help to the 2-4, so thank you. For the summer months, I think I speak for both Captain Zuber and DI Gallagher. Obviously, once the summer hits, once it starts getting warm, we do begin to kind of ramp things up because the potential for people, when it's warm out, things definitely do pick up. From our angle, we're looking at the summer months with the concern towards the violence that we've seen in some of our areas. We are in constant coordination with PSA 6 with some of the violent incidents that we have had in the summer. They have coverage in and around Douglas. Our area of focus with our public safety teams, our NCOs, our YCOs are specifically around where the violence is happening. Myself and the commanding officer, PSA 6, Captain Johnson, we're in touch regularly to kind of make sure that our deployments are not overlapped, that they kind of complement each other. Every summer, every kind of year is different in the sense that we're expecting the summer months to be busy. And sometimes that is the case. But last year, compared to 2020, the summer months, at least up until halfway through the summer, there wasn't as many incidents. And then we kind of hit a lull And then surprisingly, in December, we took a couple of shootings. So we're keeping an eye on what's going on. We're keeping an eye on who's in, who's out for those individuals that have been involved in the violent incidents in the last couple of years. Thankfully, some of the individuals are in custody as a result of some arrests. We're also in touch with our narcotics detective bureau, our narcotics division, who have some cases going on that are looking at some of the narcotics activity. So it's not just a precinct effort. Also with PSA 6 with narcotics, and we're hoping that our presence and our deployment is going to prevent a lot of the hopefully prevent some of the incidents that would happen. And deployment really is our number one kind of a crime preventative measure. So that's kind of our plan for where we've taken our shootings. As it gets warmer, we like to put some visible foot posts out along Broadway, some of the shopping corridors. Hopefully some of you have seen those cops out there as it has gotten a little bit warmer. So we plan to do that. I think there's also been a step up, if you look at any of our CompStat sheets, a step up in quality of life enforcement. So obviously, as we go into the summer months, we get a lot more noise complaints, a lot of complaints about people drinking on the corner, and our officers have been out there with discretion, in their professional judgment, giving appropriate summonses out if need be. But that's all in relation to some of the concerns and the complaints, the quality of life complaints that we're getting from the community. So.
Thanks very much. We're gonna take a question from Cynthia, and then go to Dee for questions that have been emailed or on YouTube chat, and then we'll come back to the Zoom room for members who would like to ask a question by either putting their anatomical or digital hand up to be recognized. Cynthia, do you have a question?
I do. My name is Cynthia Tibbs. I'm the Tenant Association President for the West Side Urban Renewal Brownstones. On the Upper West Side, we are 36 NYCHA Brownstones. I am also a board member of the Upper West Side Coalition. My question is for Deputy Inspector Gallagher. With summer, again, just around the corner, Central Park is going to see an increase of after-school programs, summer programs, daycares, summer camps, everything from the pool being open to the increase of zoos to bicycle riders in the park. Is the Central Park Precinct going to be experiencing a loss of patrolmen just like the other precincts have been experiencing? Or will you guys be getting extra foot patrols? How do you plan on dealing with keeping pedestrians safe in the park, since you will become more increased during the summer months? We've also seen fires that have been breaking out in the park at night, which is something that has not happened before. What, if anything, is being done to stop the fires in the park and to keep people safe during the summer months?
Sure. Thank you for your question, Cynthia. First, to address the fires, the individual who was setting those fires was arrested by a Central Park police officer, caught live in the act, and being prosecuted by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Just so everybody knows that right away. Obviously, you're 100% correct that the park does get way more livelier in the summertime. And I have not experienced in the park a loss of police officers. I've actually received 7 new police officers from the last academy class. So I can tell you that I am actually experiencing a larger number of police officers in Central Park now than I did, say, comparatively last year. The other very good thing about manpower in Central Park is that there's a separate unit in Patrol Borough Manhattan North called the Manhattan North Scooter Task Force, which is a fairly large unit of police officers that is assigned on scooters, the kind of two-wheel kind of motorcycle-y scooters that the police department has. During the wintertime, when the park is very, very quiet, they're assigned to other places that may perhaps need more police coverage. But during the summertime, as the weather gets warmer, they come back into Central Park. So I will be experiencing an increase in police officers in the park naturally through the additional 7 police officers. I haven't had any police officers transfer out. or retire, and the additional Manhattan North Scooter Task Force. And that just goes not just for the 3 precincts that are here, but for the entire city of New York. Police deployment is not static. It's not like here, here's your precinct, here's your cops that are assigned to the precinct. They're the only ones that patrol the precinct. When we see increases in crime, we fly in, as we call it, our jargon is fly in police officers from all over the place to come in and help get that crime stopped. So, right now I feel I have all the officers that I need, but if I did experience, say, a pattern or a spike in crime, I would get a substantial amount more police officers and resources from the department.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I think we'd all like to see you fly in a whole lot more police officers throughout the Upper West Side. But Dee, do you have some questions you'd like to share?
Yes, I do. I want to say welcome to all 3 of you. We have 100 people almost watching this on YouTube tonight. So welcome to all of them. It seems to be there's an overwhelming concern about bikers and violating traffic laws. Here's the question from David Mitnick, who is an attorney here on the Upper West Side. He just comments that it seems like every day there are large groups of bikers violating traffic laws and taking over the roads and obviously making a lot of noise on their off-road vehicles. The other day, I actually saw one kid on a dirt bike going up and down the stairs at 112th Street and Riverside Drive, just to bother some of the seniors that were sitting there. So we're just wondering if something can't be done about this. It's an age-old question. So I think that maybe this is something that you all probably deal with on a daily basis. And how can it get better?
Okay, well, if we're gonna go around the horn here with our 3 commanding officers, all I would ask is that brevity from each of you. Who wants to start first? Deputy Inspector Yaguchi, how about you?
I think we've talked about this, about the liability issue, so I'll save that. So what are some of the things that we are we doing? I know Dia Gallagher, he's talked about some of the things that the department does citywide, checkpoints that occur on the weekends that our department sets up, our borough sets up from on the bridges coming in from the Bronx into Manhattan. So that's one way we try to address it, is by trying to prevent these individuals from coming in the first place, or at least close off some of the avenues that they're coming in. So that's something that's done at the borough level. Citywide level, there are alerts and notifications that all of us get to try to keep track of some of these individuals. And then finally, at least at the precinct level, we do try to address this issue in a safe manner. I know my officers are watching an individual yesterday. They tried to grab him, but he got away. But I know you probably don't see it, but there are individual efforts going on. Some successes that we had last year was that the officers would essentially see somebody on a dirt bike riding recklessly or whatever. They probably wouldn't arrest him at the time, but later on they may see him because they know him. They know that person or an individual from the neighborhood and would arrest them at a later time. So we had some limited success with that last year.
Approximately how many bikes do you confiscate a year?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Approximately, I'm assuming you confiscate bikes that are, really egregious. And approximately how many bikes do you confiscate on an annual basis?
I would have to get back to you on that. It's not a high number, I can tell you, but we do try to, whenever we can. It's a low number. I'm not going to inflate it, but I would have to get back to you with the exact numbers.
There was another question too, and there seems to be some confusion about this. What is legal and what is not? what kinds of bicycles are illegal in New York? And I guess we could go to Captain Zuber for this question.
Sure.
Thank you.
First off, anything that's a dirt bike or four-wheeler is absolutely illegal to be ridden on city streets unless it's properly registered, properly insured, and they have all the proper safety equipment, meaning headlights, taillights, brake lights, helmets, and everything. So when you're seeing a mass of 15, 20, 100 or more dirt bikes and ATVs traveling on the roads, doing wheelies, doing stunts, disobeying the rules of the road, they should not be on the road at all. Now, that's not to say that it's contraband. It's perfectly legal to own that dirt bike or that quad. You could have property upstate. You could be an off-road driving instructor for all we know, but that does not mean that you're allowed to drive it on the street. Just to piggyback on what Inspector Yaguchi was saying, there are a lot of efforts that are happening citywide when it comes to confiscations. We do take videos of these individuals when we see them, or of the groups. We take still pictures and we share that out amongst our investigators, amongst the officers that work in other precincts, because a lot of the times they do recognize them. We will take the complaint reports now, and then we're able to apprehend them later. You're not going to see us getting into high-speed vehicle pursuits down Broadway or on Columbus Avenue or Amsterdam, because that's just much more dangerous. Excuse me. They're already breaking the law. They are not going to stop for the police. In fact, if they see a marked police car, chances are they're going to start showing off even more. They're going to take more risks. And you're going to, because many times they're videotaping themselves. They have their GoPro cameras, their cell phones, and that's what they're posting on social media. It's a great show for them to be seen blazing down Broadway, popping wheelies. It's even better if behind them in their video is a line of NYPD cars with their turret lights on. So we will not see that. You also had a question about how many motorcycles and bikes are confiscated. Again, I don't have an exact number either. What we can say is that here in the Upper West Side, this is not a destination for them. They're not housed here. They're not stored here. They're driving back and forth through here. Other precincts, other commands around the city where the individuals live or store these illegal motorcycles and dirt bikes, that's where you're seeing the majority of the confiscations. You will maybe pick one off here or there because they have a flat tire and they jump on the back of somebody else's motorcycle and they leave their dirt bike behind. That's when you'll generally see us confiscating them. They do not get them back.
Do you give tickets for what I call salmoning, which
For what?
means salmoning, meaning bikes in the bike lane that are going the wrong direction in the bike lane? All types of bikes. It
Yeah.
is a very unsafe situation, and we did have a few people concerned about that. Can you get a ticket for salmoning in New York?
I've never heard it called that, but it makes sense. I think you might be onto something there.
Going upstream.
Yeah. If you're on a bicycle, you have to obey the rules of the road, meaning stoplights, red lights, stop signs, turning lanes, everything, all of the above. You cannot go down the wrong way street just because you're on a bicycle. So absolutely, they can be given a summons for that.
Okay. And Deputy Inspector Gallagher, same question. I mean, I know the park may be a little bit different in terms of these types of bikes, but what are you seeing there and how are you enforcing this illegal bike? And I don't see so many people salmoning in Central Park because honestly, they're taking their life in their own hands if they do. But what are you seeing there?
My biggest concern, and first of all, thank you for giving me a new phrase that I have never heard either, but I love it and I got it right away. I think we'll use that at our next traffic stat. I think what I see primarily in the park is speeding. If I see a motorcycle in the park, obviously we have the luxury of that's automatically illegal. Just the mere presence of a motorized vehicle in Central Park is against the law. The e-bikes, there's some debate about e-bikes, whether they should be in the park or not. My concern is this, that if you're on an e-bike and you're driving appropriately and reasonably inside Central Park, nobody's ever going to notice that. Nobody's going to bother you. I mean, after all, it's a park. So what we focus much of our enforcement on is the speeding and the speed limit. And of course, with respect to traffic. During the winter months, the real pedestrian danger in Central Park is on the transverses. Because as I'm sure many of you know, particularly since they go into the major streets of the Upper West Side, the transverses freeze faster than the corresponding arterial streets. They create an ice condition, and the fatalities that have actually occurred in Central Park during the winter months occur because of ice on the transverse. So during the winter months, our traffic officers patrol the transverse because that's where the danger is. As the weather gets warmer, we take them off the transverse and put them in the park to address the bicycle conditions that we're just talking about. So I would say that, you know, the seasons matter in the park. And in the past couple of months, we're dealing with colder weather. Now our focus is more inside the park on essentially speeding e-bikes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had actually one more question, and
Sure.
that's for all of you really, regarding
Sure.
accessibility of your station. For instance, if somebody sees something and they want to say something and they want to call, because we got a couple of questions where people called their precincts and got no response. So how is this handled if a resident sees something and wants to report it? They feel it's important enough to report. How does that work?
I would always tell everybody, and I do this all the time, particularly in Central Park, is to call 911. I would tell you, if you need the police, do not call the police station direct. Always call 911. Why? Number one, the 911 dispatchers know exactly where the officers are and what they're doing. And they have the best way to assign the closest police officer in the most efficient manner. If you call the telephone switchboard, which is the main number of the police department, of the police station, they're not going to have the ready access to that information that a police dispatcher was. And the other thing too, in the event of a really, really big emergency, the 911 operator can figure out where you are. So you should always call 911. I would also always say that about Central Park as well, because sometimes here in Central Park, people call 911 and they give a corresponding street address. That sends a police officer that doesn't work in Central Park to there. So I would always tell you, in your first situation in an emergency, you need the police, always dial 911.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, thanks, everybody. Amy, do you have a question? I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I'm Amy Edelman. I'm from the 102nd, 103rd Streets Block Association. And my question is for DI Yaguchi. Our block association currently has a security guard who patrols evenings every night of the week. And we were wondering whether you think that continues to be a good idea, whether you have experience with how effective that is for block associations or communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime we can get an extra set of eyes, obviously, I think everyone prefers the cops, but you know, a lot of the calls that we get from 911 are people that are just walking by or driving by and witnessing crime, and they call it in. We had a robbery victim earlier this week. The victim himself wasn't able to call, but a person walking by called. So the fact that you have someone dedicated to the sole purpose of kind of acting as like a watch person, I think it's a great idea and definitely encouraged, and it can only help.
Thank you.
Aaron, did you have a question? Please unmute. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Berlinger, treasurer of West 83rd Street Block Association. And I was wondering how important is the auxiliary police force in your precinct? How effective are they? And have they been affected by the pandemic? Also, if you could give us maybe an example of the usefulness, recent event.
Absolutely. So the auxiliary program, so for those of you who don't know, we every precinct, every transit district, and every PSA around the city
Sure.
has an auxiliary unit. And they're a tremendous help. The fact that there's people who are willing to volunteer their time to wear a police uniform and come in without any kind of recompense and to help us do our job is always appreciated. And we have people who have been doing this here in our precinct and in every precinct around the city for many, many years. They're every bit as dedicated as the sworn officers are. To echo with what Inspector Yaguchi was saying about the security guard who's attached to one of the block associations in this precinct, that's exactly what this is. It's another set of eyes and ears out on the street, but it's a set of eyes and ears that are trained to work with us specifically. They're connected to us via our radio. They're connected to us via the sworn police officers who are out there with them. And they're a tremendous asset. As we get into the summer months now, and as the Upper West Side opens, I can tell you, you're going to see our auxiliaries out on a daily basis around Lincoln Center, because between May 15th and Labor Day, there's going to be over 300 events, outdoor events happening at Lincoln Center. That's a number. That's several every day. Many times there's going to be between 5 and 10 or more thousand people who are attending these. We don't have the personnel that we can dedicate to blanket an area like Lincoln Center and still maintain our readiness out answering 911 jobs. We rely on the auxiliaries to do that with us. We plan many days in advance, weeks in advance. We have a set schedule when they can come in and where we can deploy them. And like every other resource we have, every other asset, we deploy them where we can get the most benefit from having them there.
I think I would
Roughly
say,
speaking, if it's not confidential, how many do you have in your precinct?
We have about 20 who are active right now. There are more on the books. You had alluded to whether COVID had played a part. And yes, it did. For many months, we weren't allowed to put them out on the street, both because of COVID and because of some of the unrest that we were experiencing in 2020. And that did take a toll on the rank and file. Some of them have gone, some of them have transferred to different precincts. We've had some transfer into our precinct for various reasons. And we've had some that have taken a leave of absence for their own reasons. But our program is up, it's alive and well.
I just want to jump in here and raise one issue. I don't think there's anything that scares more of us than when we hear that there's guns involved in our community, that there are armed robberies, that there are people with weapons that could kill, and that these reports seem to be increasing in our community. And although we are, I think, many of us concerned about the retail, stores being, the objects of crime, I think that the pedal hits the metal when you think that someone is going to be scared to death with a loaded gun or worse. And I think we need transparency from you to share with us, how much is this really the problem? How much of a problem is it? And are there ways in which you feel you can address this particular frightening reality that does seem to many of us to be on the increase? Deputy Inspector Yaguchi, do you want to start out with that?
Sure. So I'll just start with your first point about gunpoint robberies. So we have so far this year recorded about 50 robberies, 53 maybe. And out of those 50-something robberies, so basically a robbery is anytime somebody uses force to take your property. So out of those 53-something robberies, about maybe 3 are gunpoint robberies. So I'm not trying to minimize it, but just to kind of give you a statistical idea as to the proportion of gunpoint robberies. To your other point about the existence of guns, I think there is a very serious problem of, obviously, if you look at the gun violence in the city, in some of our commands, we do see some of the same individuals, and it is a very small group with their access to guns, which allows them to do all these shootings and some of the shots fired incidents that we have. And we see that, and we sometimes, similar to the burglaries and the shopliftings that we talked about, we kind of see the same individuals being arrested for violent incidents. So I want to put the gunpoint robbery question that you have and the point that you have a little bit in perspective with the data. But to your larger point, you are right. There is an issue absolutely with the flow of guns into the city.
Captain Zuber, I see you want to add something on this, please.
I do. So you asked, what can we do about it? And I want to assure everybody that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing about it. Prior to 2020, here in the 20th precinct, there had been 7 years, a 7-year span, where there wasn't that summary arrest of a person with an illegal gun. Okay, as Inspector Gallagher had spoken about before, that summary arrest means that the officers on the street see something happening and they take that action. Last year in 2021, we made 14 of those summary arrests, people with guns. Last month, we made 3. So I'd said earlier that we are in a position here in the Upper West Side where you are still in a relatively safe area. You're still in a very safe area. You're still in a safe area when you compare it to other parts of New York City, not quite as safe as it was a little while ago. What happens after the police officers put themselves in harm's way, respond to that shots fired job, run towards the sound of gunfire, make the arrest? What happens to that criminal there? There's a lot of legislation. There's a lot of laws. We have some of the strictest gun laws in the country here in New York City. The problem is criminals don't obey the law. It's in their job description. So you cannot legislate yourself out of this problem by passing more laws. Please enforce the ones that we have.
I hear you. I hear you. Anyone in the Zoom room for a comment? Absolutely. Go ahead, Inspector Jed. You're a little bit breaking up, so I hope your signal improves. Try one more time.
Yeah, no. Can you hear me? No?
We can hear you. Let's try one more time. We'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to echo what Neil and Aoki said. There's no bigger issue for us than guns. And, you know, Central Park, even in the winter, we did apprehend somebody live with a gun, somebody driving into Central Park late at night. A police sergeant pulls them over and there's a firearm in the car. They placed him under arrest. The individual had come up from Florida, had a firearm, and was apprehended. And that's extremely unusual for Central Park. So in my opinion, and I'm sure everyone else's opinion here from the police department, guns are issue number one, hands down, number one.
Thank you. Dee, do you want to go to a question from a YouTube chat?
Yeah, Ari Boris has asked a question regarding, and I think you touched on it a bit, but how do we reinstate getting arrests from being released back on the street?
Who wants to take that?
I'll take it. I think it's a matter of the law. New York law was, as I'm sure many of you know, radically changed regarding bail and pretrial detention. There's been 2 legislative changes since the initial change. Our position has always been that there needs to be a third. And that change is what I alluded to before, that we have to allow judges the ability to decide if somebody is dangerous or not, and use the dangerousness factor and a flight risk factor to hold somebody before trial. I really think that is probably the number one legislative change that needs to happen in order to bring down violent crime in New York.
Do you feel like the police have enough say in that, those types of things, legislation like that? Do you feel like you guys have had a seat at the table?
I mean, you know, that's tough for me to say because I'm not as familiar with, you know, Albany and the kind of legislative process about how the law is made up there. I honestly, I would defer to other people about whether that's happening or not. I just know that, you know, if you look at, I think it's 49 or 48 of the other states in America, a judge can look at somebody's prior history and the crime that person is arrested for and make an assessment of whether they're dangerous or not. And, you know, judges don't always rule in favor of police officers. They don't always rule in front of district attorneys, in favor of district attorneys. They rule for defense attorneys all the time. We just want to be able to make the argument, and let us prove it or not prove it, but you should give us the opportunity to do so.
Because Captain Zuber, does this not really affect your effectiveness as a law enforcement, entity in the community?
I'm sorry, you're asking if it.
Yeah, in regard to, decisions like bail reform. And I was asking, like, what kind of input do the precincts have or the police have? Because it directly influences your effectiveness on the ground to basically fight crime and keep offenders off the street.
It absolutely does have an effect on what we do and how we do it. Unfortunately, it ends up being more of a drain on manpower because, as we've said, we end up arresting the same people multiple times for similar crimes. So that is absolutely an effect that it has. Now, but I'm going to have to echo what Inspector Gallagher was saying is when it comes to passing the laws, that's not where the police come in. We come in on the enforcement side of it. Whatever the law happens to be, that is where we are. That's where we come down. So when law gets passed in Albany or if it gets passed downtown at City Hall, that's where one way or the other, the NYPD and all the police departments around the state and the country are going to do our jobs.
Understood. Dee, do you have another question submitted by one of our?
There were a couple of people who commented on parking near the 20th precinct, how difficult it was because of the police cars. Obviously, you guys are sharing a very small space there, but Captain Zuber, can you comment on that? Because it wasn't just one person, it was two people did have a problem,
I promised him we were going to be nice. Okay, but
that's quite all right.
I think it's getting a little ugly now here.
Well,
Take your best shot, Captain, because we've got only a little bit of time left.
We could be fast about this. We could be fast about this too. So what had happened is we actually had several large construction projects that were happening here in the precinct, and our parking lot was completely torn up so that we had to, they replaced the pumps, the gas pumps and the gas tank. At the same time, there was an 18-wheeler parked here with a temporary boiler because we had no heat in the building throughout the winter. So because of that, we had to, for lack of a better term, commandeer a few parking spots on the street so that we could maintain our normal police functions. I'm happy to say that all the construction is completed. We have our parking lot back, and those parking spots that we had been using on the street have been returned back to the neighborhood.
We're gonna wrap up shortly, but I do want to ask the three of you. We are block associations, we are community groups, and we are neighbors. And as you well know, we are very much concerned about crime. And we would like to know, how can we be part of the solution? How can we collaborate with you to help prevent crime, to be, in effect, working in coordination with your efforts? We're not going to run after the bad guys, but there must be some things that we can do that we need to know more about to be engaged in being part of making our community a safer place. So whoever wants to jump on that, I think that's the theme for us. How do we move forward? How do we play a role in addressing this community crisis that many of us feel must be addressed? Be brave. One of you jump forward. Come on here. You're cops. You're cops. Come on.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. I think number one is keep the lines of communication open. Block association meetings, Zoom calls with us are very important, because I don't think I've ever gone to a community meeting where I haven't learned something, and something important. And sometimes what we learn and what we hear is not what everybody thinks we don't know. There are things that we learn all the time from talking to people. Second thing I think is that if you see something that is wrong or you think is wrong, call 911. Don't call the station house direct. Don't wait till like a block meeting. Just call us immediately. Speed with which we can get information is extremely important. And I think that we have that 911 call definitively for a reason. And I know so many people out there sometimes are hesitant to call 911 because maybe they don't think it's a real emergency. Maybe they think there are other emergencies going on. I would always tell people, if you need the police, call 911, don't hesitate, and continue to have this type of dialogue, with your precinct commanders, with the community council, and with the builder blocks, which are the smaller kind of community councils that exist in the 2.0 and the 2.4 and the park.
Deputy Inspector Yaguchi, I'll put you on the spot to try to give us a little bit of your perspective on this issue.
Yeah, I would reiterate Inspector Gallagher's point about being involved, keeping the communication lines open. We learned a tremendous amount. We learned a lot about some of your concerns tonight. We had a community council meeting last night. We heard about some things, so definitely that. Part of the same lines is just being involved, and that means being involved in a forum like this, but also being involved in elections, right? See, some of the laws that we're dealing with right now are essentially laws that were passed by people that were elected by all of us. And I think look very carefully at people's or the people running their records, what their intentions are, and ask them questions. So be involved in that way as well. But also other public officials, the DA's office, the judges that make some of these decisions as to whether they're going to hold people or not. And I am not trying to pass the buck or anything like that, but just like we are held accountable when all of you call us, the same should be across the board. And I should say, the DA's office, they have been great. The individual ADs that we speak to regarding cases, people that keep coming up, that are recidivists, that commit multiple crimes, when we bring that to their attention, they are really, really great and a huge partner for us. But I would say to all of you, if you can be involved and just kind of keep up, I think that's the biggest step. And then finally, our cops get a lot of compliments when they're out on the street. Just saying hi to a cop and thanking them for their service, that's a tremendous boost for them as well. So I just want to thank everybody for that public support.
Captain Zuber?
So I agree with everything that both Naoki and Bill said, which is really no surprise since they did say that we speak all the time and we are very close friends. So yes, this is of primary importance. You live here. These are your blocks. These are your block associations. Clearly, you're already involved. Clearly, you already have an interest. You're taking that interest to the next level by speaking to the three of us. And I know that you're up in the 24th precinct. You're speaking to Inspector Yaguchi as much as I speak to you, Steve, and to Dale, and to all the others down here in the 20th precinct. We do have great partnerships in our other agencies around the city. So it's important to know that they are constrained the same way that we are constrained. They have their own hierarchy, they have their own leadership, they have their own rules that are pushed down on them. So it's not about the individuals. We do get good cooperation. It's not 100% of the time, but it's pretty close. So there's people that are working in the same direction. We just have to work within the constraints that we have placed on us. As Naoki said, a lot of those constraints come from elections. They come from the laws that are passed by the people who we are electing. It's important that they hear from us what we want and why we want it. So you're speaking to us and you're getting the so-called expert's opinion on what we see. So please take that information to them. It's not enough to make noise and say, we want a change. What change specifically do you want? Why do you want it? How should it be implemented? And what basis do you have for that? I think that's what we're doing here today. When you see it on the street, please, this is your neighborhood. You know what belongs there. You know what doesn't belong there. Call 911. Be a great eyewitness. Be willing to take that call back from the 911 operator. Keep track of everything. Don't just call 911 and say, I did my civic duty, but I saw a person committing what I think to be a crime. This person is currently at this location. He is currently wearing, or she is currently wearing and give as much description as you can in a timely manner. Be willing to speak to the 911 dispatcher when they call you back, because our officers, when we respond, we're going to need additional information. We're going to have follow-up questions. We may think that the person wearing the blue jacket on Columbus Avenue and 86th Street is all the information you need. But when the officers get there 30 seconds later, there might be 3 or 4 of those people. We need a little bit more information. So please be willing to be that partner that we need, those eyes and those ears on the street, and continue this dialogue with us.
Well, you've given us some marching orders. Thank you very much. And I just see that Liz DeVito has a question. We're going to wrap up shortly, but Liz, if you unmute, join us, please.
That's okay. You know what? I think I'll let us wrap up, and I'll see if I can submit this question by email.
Okay. Vigilance is exhausting, but you've given us some tips on how we've got a job to do. To the three of you officers, you know you have our support. We want you and we want your officers to be safe, but we also need you to help us be safe, because it's incredibly important to all of us to make sure that what happens in our community is preserving what's wonderful and addressing what needs to be done. And you're a big part of that. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. And thanks for being transparent with us in this discussion. And to all who are on YouTube following us, please check out our website, send us an email, get engaged, and we will be back next month. Details will be forthcoming. Check out our newsletter with some more info. Friends, neighbors, have a good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Thank you,
night,
everybody.
officer.
Stay safe.
Night.